Good morning, everyone. For this lesson, I am going to be going over just kind of giving you a little tour of the interface for Photoshop, and I'm going to show you a few things with menus and panels and the toolbar, and that way you kind of get an idea of how Photoshop's laid out, and it's very similar for other Adobe programs. So if you know where these main elements of the interface are located in Photoshop, then you should be able to apply that to other programs such as Illustrator and Premiere and some of the others. There are other features in those programs depending on what you're working with, but for the most part, locations of main parts of the interface are about the same. So to begin with, I am just going to go up to File here, and I'm going to create a new file so that I can, and I'm just going to click on whatever's up here, letter, and I'll set that to create. That was a recent thing. It was just easy to do. So anyways, that way I can access all these menus so that if you're watching along with me, you can kind of see where everything's laid out. To start, I'm going to kind of circle around this area and just kind of point this out. This is what is called the toolbar, and each one of these tools does something different. Of course, it's a different function within the program, and that's the main way you work in this. The menus are located across the top. So you have a file menu, which is going to be all your things like opening, saving, exporting, and in this case, it's exporting an entire file, not just a layer, which we'll get into layers later. And then things dealing with printing. So like main things where you're working with your file that you have up are going to show up there. And edit is going to be things like copying and pasting, and then a few things like transforming and defining brushes and patterns, and you have preferences down here. So a lot of that's under the edit menu. Image is going to be things like if you go into mode, you can change the color mode from like say RGB to CMYK or vice versa. And we'll learn more about that later. There's adjustments where you can like take a picture and make it look black and white instead of in color. You can desaturate it. You can invert it, meaning what was black in one or black before it turns to white and vice versa. So it's like the negative, and so on. You can also adjust things like the image size, like the whole size of your picture, or the canvas size, the amount of space you have to work with. You can also edit in this. So there's some other things you'll explore, and we'll learn more about individual features later. Layer pertains to things where you're doing something or editing a specific layer, and layers are also located on this panel over here. We'll talk more about that when we get to layers. Type has to do with text. Anything where you're dealing with fonts and things like that, glyphs, whatnot, are going to be in this type area. The select menu will be it's things relating to the select tools, which we'll be talking about soon too. So being able to select objects within pictures or select specific like text areas and things like that you would do in here. Filter are the different effects you can do, and so you'll see all these have little sub-menus and so on. And then 3D we won't mess with as much in here, but because it is very memory intensive, but it takes a lot of memory to really do a lot of the functions on here, and it slows down our computers a lot, but it also is not necessarily the best thing for doing 3D, but you might have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about this later on in the year. View is where you're going to be, seeing things like zoom in, zoom out, where I can make my canvas zoom in, or I can go view, zoom out. It's also where you'll find things like rulers and guides. And so any of this stuff, which we'll be talking about later, you'll be able to access through the view menu. Window, the main reason you will use this is to load panels. And what a panel is are these things that are over here. And what these do is they will have different settings for some of the different types of things that you'll have within an image. Like if it's a text layer, you can access like the glyphs or the character styles, paragraph styles, all those panels you can access from there. And there's also panel groups which have multiple tabs, and you can make your own panel groups and whatnot, but panels are over here, and if they're not already open, this is how you would open them. So I just clicked on that, and I have two screens, so it's kind of hard for you to see, but I just clicked on Window, Character, and that popped up. It actually popped up my panel group that has paragraph as well. So this is where I would change settings that have to deal with text. And then help is pretty self-explanatory. That's where you're going to go to get help with certain things. For each of your tools across the top, you'll see there's a thing that says, or that is right underneath the menus, and this is your options bar. So each tool has different options, and when you click on each one of these, your options change, because for each tool there are some different features and functions that you'll be working with. Down on the bottom, if you're working in your own Photoshop and looking around, you're probably not going to see this. I use this a lot, so I just leave it up, but this is our timeline area, and it defaults to the bottom down here, and it's for when you're working with things like animation and stuff like that. And we'll talk about that later on in the year, but just so you know, that's what that is. And that's pretty much that. What I would encourage you to do for the Photoshop menu scavenger hunt is just open up Photoshop, go to File, New, and create a new file so that you can see all the menus. I would just go to Print, Letter, Create, and then that way you can go to each one of the menus and see where things are located. And anything that's a sub-menu, you can hover over it. It'll show you what the options are for those things. So moving forward, if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be walking around and helping you guys out individually. But that's our lesson for today. Have a good one.